birds and what you can do to help. And our speaker is Derek Matthews, who is Chairman and Director of Communications for the Vancouver Avian Research Centre, which is a registered Canadian charity. And the Vancouver Avian Research Centre is dedicated to wild bird research, conservation, and education, with a focus to raise awareness of environmental issues as they relate to wild birds. Derek was born in Hertfordshire, north of London, and now lives with his wife Carol in North Vancouver. And Derek is a master bird bander, as licensed in Canada, and also a North American Banding Council certified trainer. Derek has a life bird list of over 5,000 birds, which I just find mind-numbing. Amazing.
It's only half of them.
Yeah, holy smokes. But, Derek and his wife Carol have developed an online resource, World Bird Traveler, to help birders plan trips virtually, really, truly all over the world, which is a really cool resource for you folks. And I would encourage you to take a look at that. But Derek, thank you very much for joining us this evening from North Vancouver, and I appreciate your patience in getting through our administrative activities here before the program. So really appreciate that. But I'll turn it over to you. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you so much, Vic, and welcome everyone at the Kitsap Audubon. And thank you for inviting me to your virtual meeting this evening. My Zoom presentation this evening will give you an introduction to the Vancouver Avian Research Centre, or VARC as we're known. I'll talk about the state of the world's birds and what you can do to help birds in the environment. And as it's spring and we're in the middle of spring migration, I'll talk about the miracle of migration as all of our migratory birds start returning to us. And finally, there's a photo gallery of some of the birds that we've banded at Colony Farm Regional Park, which is here in Vancouver. It's in Coquitlam, BC. And I'll do that at the end of the presentation to get you excited about getting out birding this spring. So just a little background on VARC before we start. VARC is a registered Canadian charity we established in 2009. And our mandate has two key components: to provide data and research support to safeguard habitat for breeding and migratory birds, and to provide public outreach and education to raise awareness of environmental issues as they relate to birds. The research component itself is split into two parts. Our bird monitoring and banding station in Colony Farm Regional Park, which is one of Metro Vancouver's regional parks in the 26 regional parks system. And that's where we conduct our bird research and surveys. And our external partner programs with groups like Van Dusen Botanical Gardens and other groups where we engage in citizen science projects. For example, Orphaned Wildlife in Delta, where we banned all of the rehab raptors prior to release to provide our with recovery information on their rehab birds. And our Merit Bluebird Nest Box monitoring program in the interior of BC, where we monitor more than 400 bluebird boxes with a team of local volunteers. The second component of our mandate is public outreach and education. And this is a very significant part of the work we do to raise awareness of environmental issues as they relate to birds. And we do that through presentations and public events and visitor programs, which now include in-classroom schools and youth programs, VARC open houses at the banding station and SPCA kids summer camps. And we also regularly host media interviews with people like Thor Dykau here when he visited the banding station with Breakfast TV. At the foundation of all of this is the state of the world's birds, which, as I'm sure you know, is dire. An assessment by BirdLife on the conditions and trends of the world's birds provides an insight into the wider state of biodiversity. And biodiversity is the world's natural wealth. Our social and economic well-being depends on it. It provides us with vital goods and services, maintains the life-sustaining systems of the biosphere. Our very futures depend on it, and yet biodiversity is being lost faster than ever. The status of the world's birds is deteriorating, with more and more species at risk of extinction, and the number of bird species listed as critically endangered has reached an all-time high. The number increases every year, and I've been doing presentations like this for more than a decade, and every year it goes up. And we now have 1,445 species. That's 1 in 8 of the world's bird species threatened with extinction. Add the near-threatened species, and the list goes up by another 1,010. That's almost a quarter of all bird species. And the important thing to point out is some of these species have not been cited for many, many years and are likely already extinct, like this Eskimo curlew, which hasn't been seen for 60 years, another species that went from millions to a few museum specimens in just a single lifetime. And the problem, of course, is global. Over the last decade, BirdLife partners have worked to assess the conditions and trends of the world's birds. And what we know about the changing state of the world's birds is that many bird species, including common ones, are declining. As you can see, farmland birds in Europe have shown marked declines, with almost 50% of common bird species in Europe having declined across 20 European countries. These birds, corn bunting and turtle dove, you can see their declines. These were really, really common birds for me growing up in Hertfordshire, just north of London. In every copse and grove, there was turtle dove singing. And as you can see, their numbers have declined by 95%. Water birds are showing widespread declines, particularly in areas such as the Yellow Sea region in Asia. And this has had an especially devastating effect on long-distance shorebird migrants that rely on intertidal mudflats to refuel for their journeys. Studies of resident Australian waders reveal that 81% of their populations have disappeared in 25 years. More than 50% of all water bird populations are declining, and it's all due largely to widespread loss of wetland habitats. Shorebirds are one of my favourite groups to study, and I've been lucky enough to see most of the world's shorebirds, including this one, spoon-billed sandpiper, which is critically endangered with fewer than 100 pairs now remaining. In an ever more crowded world, species that need lots of space, such as great Indian bustard, another species uplisted to critically endangered, are losing out. The population of India is expected to reach almost 2 billion by 2050, the population of the planet up to 10 billion, and birds that need a lot of space, like this bird, clearly will be pushed towards extinction. Long distance migrants are declining, and when you see the threats to long distance migrants, not only on their winter grounds, but on their breeding grounds and at stopover sites along the way, it's really not surprising. This photo is of what's still called a common cuckoo. It's a long distance migrant between Europe and Africa, and a very much loved spring visit to England, where I grew up. Everyone knew when cuckoos had arrived because you'd hear them everywhere. But unfortunately not so common anymore. Since the early 1980s, cuckoo numbers have dropped by almost 70%. And we tend to think of these problems as third world country problems, as other countries' problems, and not ours here in North America. But I'm sure you know that we've lost almost 3 billion birds since 1970. And the State of Canada's bird report shows that more species are declining than increasing, and dramatic declines in groups like the aerial insectivores, grassland birds and shorebirds. Some groups like waterfowl and raptors are increasing thanks to sustained conservation efforts. Swallows are part of the guild of aerial insectivores, birds that specialize in feeding on flying insects, and they've shown precipitous declines. In Canada, barn swallow populations have fallen by more than 80%. Bank swallow by 98%. And as you can see, cliff swallow, northern rough-winged swallow, purple martin, all by more than 60%. More than 1,200 important bird areas, IBAs, have been identified around the world. But unfortunately, many are in unfavourable states, and nearly half of them lack any legal protection whatsoever. So, why are birds declining so precipitously? A range of threats are driving these declines. The greatest expansion of agricultural land in recent years has taken place in the tropics, with things like palm oil plantations in Malaysia and vast industrial scale monocultures, which has caused large scale decline of grassland and farmland birds. Each year, longline, gillnet and trawl fisheries are responsible for the incidental deaths of hundreds of thousands of seabirds. Birds Life Albatross Task Force with the RSPC, the Royal Society for Protection of Birds in the UK, has been working with trawl fleets to reduce this bycatch, and has succeeded in significantly reducing the scale of the problem, but each year hundreds of thousands are still killed. Seabirds are threatened at a faster rate globally than all other groups. 19 of the 22 species of albatross are threatened with extinction, including this bird, the critically endangered Chatham albatross. The introduced house mouse has had a devastating impact on seabird populations on remote islands in the Southern Atlantic and Pacific. Places like Hawaii and New Zealand are now almost devoid of native land birds. Contamination of food sources, like the widespread use of diclofenac, used as an anti-inflammatory drug in treating livestock in Asia, has had a devastating effect on vultures. 30 years ago, tens of millions of these birds, white-rump vultures, were flying the skies of Asia. It was probably the most abundant large bird of prey in the world. It's now on the brink of extinction. Numbers have declined by 99.9% since 1992. That's had an impact on humans too, with increases in diseases like TB, anthrax, foot and mouth disease. And despite alternative safe drugs being readily available, diclofenac has been authorized for use in domestic animals in Spain, where 80% of all European vultures are found. And it's also now becoming widely available on the EU market. And then there's unregulated hunting. Egypt is the very worst place to be a migratory bird. 140 million birds are trapped during full migration. Hundreds of kilometers of nets and shade traps and ground snares and these horrible lime-coated sticks are set out to harvest wild birds. And that's in addition to the additional 25 million hunted in the rest of the Mediterranean each year. Climate change poses a very serious threat to nearly half of all the bird species here in Canada. Some species only survive within tiny climate bubbles. Mercury pollution has risen nearly 50-fold in this bird, in ivory gulls, in the Arctic over the past 100-odd years, which is really further clear evidence of the global and circumpolar impacts of human activity on Arctic wildlife, which is already stressed by the most pronounced climate change on Earth. So as you can see, a range of threats are driving these declines, but they're all pretty much anthropogenic, as these next great photos illustrate from the Guardian newspaper in England on overpopulation and overconsumption in pictures. Sprawling Mexico City, displacing every scrap of natural habitat. The 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. A feedlot in Brazil. Shopping mall in southern India as consumer culture spreads globally. Greenhouses as far as the eye can see in Almeria, Spain. BC, called the Brazil of the North, with clear-cut logging on Vancouver Island. We just do a much better job of hiding it. And catching the trash tube in a remote bay in Indonesia. No room for nature in China. By the end of this decade, China will have built enough new skyscrapers to fill 10 cities the size of New York. China consumed more cement in the 3.5 years from 2010 to 2013 than the US used in the entire 20th century. Can you imagine how much that is? Cattle grazing as more forest cleared in the Amazonas of Brazil. And we all know Brazil's Amazon rainforest has suffered the worst fires in a decade. Oil wells in California. Researchers have discovered seabirds are eating plastic waste because it smells like their food, and it's thought now that up to 90% of all seabirds eat plastic. And as you can see, this fills their stomachs and they then starve to death. Every year, 17 billion pounds of plastic enters the marine environment. That's more than 32,000 pounds a minute of plastic. Again, can you imagine what that volume of plastic looks like? And slum-dwelling residents in Port-au-Prince in Haiti facing a very bleak future indeed. Former old-growth forests leveled for reservoir development in Oregon. So really, we're all guilty. So it's a bleak picture, and we're all seeing sort of firsthand the effects of all this environmental devastation in forest fires, in floods and droughts all around the world. But let me cheer you up a bit, at least, hopefully, by talking about our birds and the miracle of migration. We're now, as you know, in the middle of spring migration, when our migratory birds like this gorgeous male lazuli bunting, which breed at Colony Farm, undertake long migratory journeys to return to us from overwintering in the neotropics. And as you'll see, migration really is a miracle, with birds making astounding journeys, as I'm sure you know, from breeding grounds to winter grounds, and then back to breeding grounds each year. So let's just talk a little about migration. As I'm sure you know, there are both resident and migratory birds. Resident birds, of course, do not make seasonal migrations. Migratory birds, of course, do, and some are short and some are long-distance migrants. Within a species, not all populations may be migratory. This is called partial migration. And a good example of that is with American robin. Partial migration simply means that within a species, not all populations may be migratory. There are both migratory and resident individuals. And people often notice this in early spring. A few robins hang around, certainly here all winter, but suddenly in spring, there's an influx of robins, and you'll see them in flocks on lawns and school playing fields. And these are often the migratory birds returning. The answer to why do birds migrate is really simple. And the answer is survival. The risks of staying behind far outweigh those of moving on. Again, there are four main flyways in North America, as I'm sure you know. The Atlantic, Mississippi, Central, and of course the Pacific Flyway, where we are. Flyways follow mountain ranges and coastlines, avoiding barriers like large stretches of open water. Routes are genetically programmed or learned from adults, and routes on forward and return migration are often different. Many birds migrate in flocks. Bird migration is all about saving energy. And one study showed that birds migrating in flocks choreograph the flapping of their wings with exquisite precision to help them save energy, which on its own is pretty amazing if you think about it. The altitude birds fly at on migration varies. Most birds fly between roughly 500 and 2,000 feet within that range. But an exception to that altitude is this bird, the bar-headed goose, which migrates over the Himalayas to spend the winter in parts of South Asia. And they've been observed flying at 24,000 feet. As you can see, they have very broad wings, and the hemoglobin in their blood has high oxygen affinity. But just imagine the energy and effort it takes to climb to 24,000 feet, just short of the death zone. And maybe even more amazing is a new study that showed this tiny bird, the great reed warbler, which migrates 7,000 kilometers between Northern Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa twice a year at heights up to 6,000 meters, nearly 20,000 feet, higher than Everest Base Camp. And this is a bird that weighs about the same as a house sparrow. Many of our songbirds migrate at night when the air is cooler and less turbulent, and when there are no diurnal predators present. And this is going on right now as spring migration continues. So, take a moment to go outside tonight and just look up for a moment and consider the miracle that's happening literally right above your head. Many songbirds make non-stop nocturnal flights of 700 kilometers or more. But look at the longest non-stop migration of any bird, a bird called bar-tailed godwit. And bar-tailed godwit makes the 11,000 kilometer journey from Alaska to New Zealand in 8 days without stopping. They feed on mollusks and aquatic insects, and they're actually able to sleep by shutting down half their brain, which is called uni-hemispheric slow wave sleep. But this is equivalent to a human running at more than 70 kilometers per hour for more than a week. So just for a moment, think of the challenges of doing this: distance and timekeeping, navigation, predicting weather, flying at high altitudes, social communication, and all of the physiological challenges. Mammals are not the biggest evolutionary success. Birds are better in everything. They burn their fat loads up to 10 times efficiently as we do, as humans do. And this may be the single most important key to their migration success. And the fact that they store in advance also keeps them hydrated. So a marathon runner can grab a cup of water from the sidelines. Birds obviously don't have that luxury. So when they burn fat, they make carbon dioxide and water. It's called metabolic water. So their fat stores are acting as a canteen. So again, a marathon runner is an inadequate metaphor for them. They can't hit the wall like a marathoner does, or obviously they'll die. They don't drink for over a week. It's really more like a superpower. The fastest migrant is another endangered species called the great snipe. And this bird makes the 6,800 kilometer journey from Sweden to Central Africa in 3.5 days without stopping at an average speed of 97 kilometers per hour. And just a little bit of trivia, because everyone really likes this bit of trivia. The word sniper originated in the 1700s among soldiers in British India. If a hunter was skilled enough to bring down an elusive snipe, he was called a sniper, and that's where the word comes from. And even our smallest birds, like rufous hummingbirds, are long-distance migrants, breeding as far north as Alaska and overwintering in Mexico, nearly 4,000 miles. They can fly more than 1,300 miles without stopping. And based on body length alone, that's the longest distance migrant of any bird species. And these tiny dynamos weighing just 3 grams, with wings beating at 80 beats a second, hearts beating at over 1,200 beats a minute in flight. Truly remarkable. The longest migration of any songbird is a bird called the northern wheatear, a bird from Baffin Island in northeastern Canada, crossed the Atlantic, as you can see, to winter in western sub-Saharan Africa. But what was even more amazing is that 2 wheatears banded north of Fairbanks in Alaska flew over the Bering Sea and through northern Russia and Kazakhstan before crossing the Arabian Desert to winter in areas of Sudan, Uganda, and Kenya. The Alaskan bird's average round trip distance, 30,000 kilometers, is the longest known migration of any songbird. And again, this is a bird the size of a sparrow in your garden. We were actually on a birding trip to Kenya last year and saw northern wheatears there, and you just realize just what a mammoth physical feat it is to travel that far under your own steam. So these are the journeys these birds made, and geolocators were attached to these birds in Alaska and then collected when the birds returned to their breeding grounds the following spring, pinpointing wintering areas for them. So the question is, how do they do it? How do they do it? How do birds return to precisely the same site they occupied previously? And we know that birds use polarized light, they use the constellations, they use the Earth's magnetic field, and also visual landmarks. But it doesn't really explain why birds like blackpoll warblers that overwinter in North and South America, on their outward journey in spring, come up through the Caribbean, through Florida, up to the boreal forest to breed. But then in the fall, they all amass on the eastern seaboard and then fly non-stop over the Atlantic Ocean, day and night, for 4 days or more to their winter grounds, 4,000 kilometers over water for a small warbler. Why? We still don't truly know the answer to that. So what can we do? I think people want to help, but sometimes it's overwhelming and hard to think that on our own, we can have an impact on climate change or habitat loss and degradation. But here are 7 simple ways to help birds and the environment. Number 1, make windows safe in your homes. This was VARC's focused conservation project last year.
Between 16 and 42 million birds die annually as a result of window strikes in Canada, and up to 1 billion birds each year in North America. We can change this. Bird strikes are easily preventable. Visit the VARC Window Strike webpage and see how you can take immediate action to make your windows safe for birds.
And again, it's one of the top sources of human-caused bird mortality, despite being easily preventable. So please check out our dedicated Window Strikes webpage and see how you can take immediate action to prevent this. Number 2, keep cats indoors. And I appreciate I'm preaching to the converted this evening for sure, but outdoor cats are a year-round threat to birds and other small animals. Roaming domestic and feral cats are the #1 human-related source of bird deaths in North America. And that means more than 3 billion birds lost to cat predation each year.
Did you know that cats are the #1 human-related source of bird deaths? Since the 1970s, bird populations have been rapidly declining. And cats kill around 3 billion every year in North America alone. But it's not just birds who are in danger. Outdoor cats face threats such as disease, cars, unwanted pregnancy, and cat theft. So how can you help? Supervise your outdoor cat. Or better still, build your feline friend a catio in your back garden. For more information, visit the VARC website and help make British Columbia a safer place for cats and birds.
So this is our focus project for us this year. Not only do outdoor cats threaten native wildlife, but they also face those dangers themselves. So please, if you have cats or your neighbours have cats, please encourage them to visit our Cats and Birds webpage and either keep them indoors or consider building a catio enclosure for them. Again, lots of info on our website, and we're actually offering a cash prize of $1,000 this year for the winner of our Create a Catio competition. So please help spread the word for us. Number 3, reduce lawn by planting native species. We have an estimated something like 40 to 50 million acres of lawn in North America. Birds have fewer places to safely rest during migration and to raise young. And research has actually shown that during spring migration, 50% of radio-tracked thrushes landed within 55 yards of a house and remain there all day. So even tiny pieces of nature are important for birds crossing these increasingly fragmented urban and suburban landscapes. So add native plants and provide shelter and nesting areas for birds. And don't forget water. We have a number of water features in our garden here in North Van. And this short video just shows you how important water is to birds and how many species you can attract by simply offering copious amounts of clean, fresh water. So hopefully that's just convinced you how important it is to provide water for birds. Birds don't have sweat glands like humans, but they clearly need water to drink and to bathe as well. So the number one best way to attract birds to your garden is, again, offer copious amounts of clean, fresh water. Number 4, avoid pesticides. More than £1 billion of pesticides are applied in North America every year. And the continent's most widely used insecticides are called neonics, and they're lethal to birds and to the insects that birds consume. They're obviously not good for us either. Nearly 70% of produce sold now contains pesticides. So reduce pesticides around your home and garden, look for healthy organic food choices, and cut out some of the £1 billion of pesticides used each year. Number 5, drink shade-grown coffee. 3/4 of the world's coffee farms grow their plants in the sun, destroying the forest that birds need for food and shelter. So shade-grown coffee preserves a forest canopy that helps migratory birds survive the winter. So please buy shade-grown, bird-friendly coffee, not just fair trade, but shade-grown. It really is a win-win. It's delicious, economically beneficial to coffee farmers, and it helps more than 40 species of North American migratory songbirds that winter in coffee plantations, which include orioles, warblers, and thrushes. Lots of information on our website about where to get bird-friendly shade-grown coffee from. And also you can go to Smithsonian for you guys in the US, lots of providers of it now. Protect our planet from plastics, number 6. There are just so many statistics about our plastic-obsessed culture. North Americans still throw away 100 billion plastic grocery bags each year. And as you saw earlier, plastic debris acts like a sponge for toxic chemicals and becomes highly toxic poison to marine animals like this albatross. And studies show that at least 80 seabird species now ingest plastic, mistaking it for food. And you can see cigarette lighters, toothbrushes, and other trash have been found in the stomachs of dead albatrosses like this one. And the rate of plastic pollution, it just continues to steadily increase worldwide, with one study last year estimating that about 8 million metric tons of plastic enters the ocean annually. And that's enough to cover every foot of coastline on the entire planet. So please reduce your plastics, avoid single-use plastics, and choose reusable items. It's not enough to just recycle. So much still ends up in landfill, as I'm sure you know. And finally, number 7, watch birds and share what you see. Again, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but the world's most abundant bird, the passenger pigeon, went extinct in like 50 years, and people didn't realize how quickly it was vanishing until it was too late. So monitoring birds is essential to help protect them. To understand how birds are faring, we need hundreds of thousands of people like you guys to report what they're seeing. So get out and enjoy birds while helping science and conservation. There are so many citizen science projects such as eBird and Project Feeder Watch, the CBC, Breeding Bird Survey, International Shorebird Survey, all require your records of your bird observations, and your contributions will provide really valuable information to show where birds are thriving and where they need help. So I'm just going to finish this part before we just look at some photographs to wrap up as a summary, because really every little does help. And this excerpt from Miyoko Chu's great book, Songbird Journeys, really encapsulates everything that I've said. And that is, when migratory birds cross our paths, they compel us to stop and marvel at their beauty, their fluid lives in 4 seasons and distant places, and the ecological intricacies they require to survive. As the miracle of migration continues, the arrival of songbirds each spring is a cause for celebration, for summer would not be the same without them. In autumn, though, we cannot keep them. The songbirds grow restless and depart, leaving us with emptier winter days and a quiet reminder that we should not take them for granted. So I couldn't leave without some photographs of some of the amazing birds that we've banded at Colony Farm. But first, just a few photos of some of our public outreach and education programs to raise awareness of some of these environmental threats our birds are facing. This little girl came down to help with our tree swallow nest box monitoring program some years ago, and has gone on to become an advocate for bird conservation, speaking at schools and colleges throughout the Lower Mainland. Our schools, youth and family day programs have been hugely successful. Research in UK shows that 80% of 8 to 12-year-olds are now completely disconnected from nature. Here, the Catching the Spirit youth group at their annual visit to the banding station, where they get to hold and release wild birds under supervision and learn about birds and the environment and what they can do to help. Much is being talked about regarding what's called nature deficit disorder in kids, and it refers to a trend these days that children are spending less and less time outdoors, resulting in a wide range of behavioural problems. So these 3 little girls here at a Vark open house, you can see ferrying birds in bird bags back to the banding station for processing. And really educating kids is so important, and that's really a very big part of what we do at Vark and at the banding station and with our in-classroom schools programs. But it's not only kids. Adults too need to be educated about the threats facing birds and the environment. Hummingbirds are apodiforms, which comes from the Greek word meaning no feet. They do, of course, have feet, but their feet are too far back on their bodies to walk. They can perch, but they can't walk. So this means if we place a hummingbird on someone's palm like this one, it will stay there for a moment until we give it the momentum to fly. And no one who holds and releases a rufous hummingbird can fail to be captivated by these tiny dynamos, again with wings beating at 80 beats a second, hearts beating at over 1,200 beats a minute in flight and breathing at over 500 times a minute during flight as well. And this is normally the reaction we get when someone releases a hummingbird. So just a few photographs, or quite a lot of photographs, because I know you guys are all bird people. So just some really lovely photographs of the birds that we've banded at Colony Farm. Gorgeous male myrtle warbler, female yellow-headed blackbird, gorgeous male western tanager, Anna's hummingbird, Rufus hummingbird, McGilvry's warbler this week. McGilvry's warblers are showing up this week, so good time to get out to look for them. Nice male Nashville warbler, Cassin's vireo, a palm warbler, 1-4, which was a rare bird alert for us. House wren, golden crowned sparrow, they're moving through in good numbers at the moment. Bank swallow, that bird you saw, the numbers have declined in Canada by 98% in the past couple of decades. Hammond's flycatcher, been catching those this week as well. Hermit thrush, barn swallow, black-headed grosbeak, one of my favorite birds of the spring and summer. Eastern kingbird, white-throated sparrow, western meadowlark. Wilson's warbler this week has been Wilson's warbler week at the station. We just had a ton of them moving through, which was really exciting. Northern water thrush is a fairly rare full transient for us. Northern shrike, they actually overwinter in the park, and they are songbirds, but the bill makes them look much more like raptors. And as you, I'm sure, know, they impale prey on barbed wire fences and thorns, which is why they were actually called butcher birds by early ornithologists. And it was once thought it was just wanton killing, but it's actually been proved that they cache prey for periods of food shortages. Warbling vireo, lazuli bunting, gorgeous birds. They breed at Colony Farm. Gorgeous male, adult male cedar waxwing. And orange crown warbler. Birds in this genus have these very, very sharply pointed bills, which they use to actually insert into closed buds. They then prise the bud open by opening their bills to extract small spiders and insects. And they'll actually do that in the hand. If you gently put a finger and thumb on the upper and lower mandibles like this, they will actually prise your finger and thumb apart in this reflex action. Brewer's sparrow, clay-coloured sparrow, swamp sparrow. The old fields at Colony Farm are excellent habitat for sparrows. Gorgeous male indigo bunting. They hybridize with lazuli buntings where their range overlaps. So this was a rare bird for us. Red-eyed vireo. And this is also a red-eyed vireo, but a juvenile. So juvenile red-eyed vireos have brown irises like this one. So you could say a brown-eyed vireo. Gorgeous male common yellowthroat, savannah sparrow, purple finch, gorgeous bird. Peterson described the purple finch as the sparrow dipped in raspberry juice, which is a great description for this bird. Downy woodpecker, and some of our baby birds, just because they're insanely cute. Cedar waxwing, baby Swainson's thrush, tree swallow, and baby house finch. I was given this presentation once, and someone said it reminded them of an old Eastern European gentleman with those really bushy eyebrows and the hooked nose, which was a great description for this baby house finch just about to fledge. Black-capped chickadee, of course, babies, they always look so grumpy with that very wide gape, which is characteristic or diagnostic of cavity nesters like chickadees. Golden crown kinglet, long-eared owl. The old fields at Colony Farm are a preferred roosting site for this species. Northern harrier, and a couple of raptors, sharp-shinned hawk, Cooper's hawk, northern saw-whet owls. We do northern saw-whet owl monitoring in the fall. And when we're banding these birds, we use soft casting jackets like this one. And casting jackets are fabric restraints used while applying the band and taking measurements to ensure that we don't injure these tiny owls. And everyone loved this photograph. We called it our saw-wet burrito. Male band-tailed pigeons. Males have that deep pinkish purple on the head and that extensive green patch to the nape you can see. And finally, black-headed grosbeak. So really that's it, guys. Please visit us online. Join the VARC Facebook group so you know what's going on at VARC. And please view our YouTube channel. We made a short 15-minute video on our banding station protocol, code of ethics and management. And I'd really encourage you to view it. It really highlights that above all else, the well-being of every bird is our top priority at all times. And our social media links are at the very bottom of our website pages. As a charity, of course, and volunteer organisation, we rely on donations to continue our work. We're all volunteers, so again, please make a contribution, however small, and maybe we can arrange a field trip for you guys to come up and visit the station at Colony Farm, where you can see your donation at work. Attend a workshop. We host both bird banding and bird identification workshops, which are really great ways to take your interest in birds to the next level. Again, lots of information and testimonials on all of our activities and our workshops on our website. So really, that's it. Thanks so much for attending my virtual talk this evening. And if there are any questions just for a few minutes, I actually have another meeting I've got to run to, but I'll be very pleased to answer them.
Okay, Annie, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Annie, are you gonna see if there are any questions? I don't see any questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to put into the chat?
Yeah, Derek?
Yes.
This is Vic.
Vic, hi, Vic.
Excellent presentation. And again, really appreciate your taking time to share with us this evening.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Were all these pictures taken at Colony Farm?
Everyone, every single one.
Oh my goodness,
by me.
That was a spectacular photographic display. That was
thank you. Yeah.
Tapping to your excellent talk.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, it's one of the wonderful things about bird banding, of course, is you do get to see birds up close and personal. So, I'd really encourage you guys to maybe later on, maybe in the fall, is organise a Kitsap Audubon trip up to Colony Farm. Unfortunately, bird banding is an early morning activity, so you'd have to, set alarms early, or maybe sort of come up and stay overnight, because you really need to be at the banding station for really 7:30 at the latest. Birds are most active in that period after dawn when they're actively feeding. But we'd love to host a morning for you guys. So if we can do that, we'll be happy to.
Thank you, Derek. So we have a question in the chat from Faith Alco. She said, thank you so much for the presentation. And she asked if you've noticed any prominent changes in species distribution or abundance over the years.
Yes, we have. And if you go to our website, we publish an annual report every year, which we've done from 2009. It's a very, very comprehensive report, which includes all of our data, all of the statistics on birds, not just banded, but we also do a weekly survey as well. And all of that information, again, is on the website. Really encourage you to go and read our annual reports. There's a lot of incredible information in there, and it will answer all of your questions about species diversity and abundance.
I just dropped that link in the chat for everyone.
Thank you so much. So guys, I have to run. So thank you so much for attending this virtual talk. Vic said it was 7 to 8, and we've just gone over a little bit for me. But thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate your time. And, again, we would love to see you guys at the station.
Thank you so much for presenting. We really, really appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Good night, everyone. Annie?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.